The smell of wet wool and dry rot is a specific cocktail. It tastes like failure. I stood in the center of the St. Jude's Athenaeum, my boots leaving damp, heavy prints on the herringbone floor, and listened to the building dying. The heating system was rattling in the pipes, a metallic cough that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. But under that, I could hear the groan of timber that had taken too much weight for too long. Under it, something else rode the air, faint and wrong. Damp earth. Not the clean smell of rain, but soil trapped where it shouldn't be. A thin tide line stained the lower masonry near a locked stairwell door, and a dusting of white crystals clung to the mortar like salt. I filed it away and blamed the storm. Wind-driven rain, old brick, old city. Rain lashed against the leaded glass windows, blurring the gray Portland skyline into a smear of charcoal and slate. I adjusted the strap of my tool bag, the leather cutting into my shoulder. I wasn't supposed to be here to save it. I was here to write the obituary. "You're early," a voice said. It wasn't welcoming. I turned. Standing behind the circulation desk was a woman who looked like she was holding the roof up with sheer willpower. Valentina Rodriguez. I knew the name from the frantic emails she'd sent to my firm. But the photo on the staff website didn't account for the exhaustion bruising the skin under her eyes, or the way her spine was so rigid it looked painful. She was older than me, maybe late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe knot that was slowly losing the war against the humidity. "Miles Carter," I said. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet room. "Legacy preservation." "I know who you are, Mr. Carter." She didn't come around the desk to shake my hand. She stayed entrenched behind her fortress of books. "You're the man Atticus King hired to tell the city this building is a safety hazard so he can turn it into luxury lofts." She held my gaze like she'd done it 100 times in boardrooms. "And before you start, Mr. Carter, don't make choices for me. Men keep deciding what this place should become. Bring me facts. I decide what we do with them. I'm the man hired to give a structural assessment." I corrected, keeping my tone flat. CS14, I don't do arguments, I do wood. If the building is safe, I say it's safe. If it's not, I let the sentence hang, looking up at the water stain spreading like a bruise across the plaster fresco above us. "It is safe," she said. But her hand moved to a stack of papers on the desk, covering them protectively. "It's just tired. Tired buildings kill people, Ms. Rodriguez." I walked over to the nearest support pillar, a massive oak column wrapped in decorative molding. I ran my hand down the grain. It was cold, tacky with dampness. I pressed my thumb into the wood near the base. It gave. Soft. Sponge. I pulled my hand back, wiping the wood dust on my jeans. "This isn't tired. It's sick." She flinched just a fraction, but she held her ground. "We have a grant pending, the St. Jude's Heritage Fund. If we get the certification, we get the money for repairs. I just need you to sign off on the prelims." "I can't sign off on a lie." "Then leave," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a shout. "If you aren't going to help get out of my library." I looked at her, really looked at her. She wore a fitted white short-sleeve blouse collar, open but still tasteful, and large, over-ear headphones rested around her neck, silent. She was terrified. I could see the pulse jumping in the hollow of her throat. She loved this place. It wasn't an asset to her. It was a limb. Something twisted low in my gut, tight as a knot pulled too hard. My hand paused on the strap of my bag. The ghost of the last time I'd walked away from a job because the paperwork didn't add up. "I'm not leaving," I said, setting my heavy bag down on the floor with a thud. The sound made dust motes dance in the dim light. I'm going to do the assessment thoroughly. And if I find a way to brace this column without stripping the historical status, I'll put it in the report. Her eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because I like old things, I said, turning my back to her to unzip my bag. And because it's raining. 3 days later, the silence of the library had become a second skin. I worked in the east wing where the floor joists were threatening to detach from the main wall. It was solitary work, dirty and precise, which was exactly how I liked it. I had set up a temporary station near the window, sawhorses my Japanese pull, saws a chaotic array of chisels, and a thermos of black coffee. The library was open to the public, but barely anyone came in this weather. Just a few students seeking warmth and the occasional senior citizen reading newspapers on the wooden rods. Valentina was always there. She moved through the stacks like a ghost, reshelving books, checking catalogs, managing a staff of 2 volunteers who looked as ancient as the furniture. I was currently on my back, slid underneath a massive mahogany reading table that had listed to the left. One of the legs had snapped clean through years ago, and someone had fixed it with duct tape and a stack of coasters. It was offensive. I removed the garbage fix and measured the break. Clean fracture. I could dowel this, use a butterfly key to stabilize the grain and hide the repair so well that in 50 years, no one would know I was here. I slid out from under the table, brushing sawdust from my hair. Valentina was sitting at the table I was fixing. I froze. She hadn't been there a minute ago. She sat upright this time, not hiding a thick, leather-bound book open in front of her like she'd claimed the spot on purpose. Big, black, noise-canceling headphones covered her ears. Both hands were on the cups, adjusting them, and her mouth held that calm, teasing curve that made it hard to read whether she was amused or warning me. A closed book lay between us on the tabletop, a quiet line drawn in leather and paper. I set my chisel down, and instead of hovering like an intruder, I pulled out the chair across from her and sat. My gray t-shirt was still dusted with saw shavings. The library's warm lamps turned the air honey-colored, softening the rain outside. Her eyes flicked up from the page, not to the room, to me. Direct, steady. Not the kind of look you give a contractor, the kind you give a man you've been measuring in silence. She kept the headphones on for another beat, then slid them down to her neck in one smooth motion, never breaking eye contact. She marked her place with a silk ribbon and closed the book. I cannot read while you look like that, she whispered. She looked down at the table surface, running her hand over the scarred varnish. This was my father's spot. He was the head librarian before me. He died 3 years ago. This table, it wobbles. It's annoying. But it's his. The admission hung between us, fragile. I looked at the table leg I had just prepped for surgery. It won't wobble by tonight, I said. I'm fixing the leg. I'm going to dowel it from the inside. It'll hold. She looked at me, surprised. You're fixing furniture now. That's not in the assessment contract. The contract is for the building, I said, grabbing a chisel. The table is on my time. She stared at me for a long moment, a mix of confusion and suspicion in her gaze. Then she picked up her book. Thank you, she said stiffly. Don't thank me yet, I muttered, turning back to my tools. Glue hasn't set. By the end of the second week, the library had become a battleground. Not between us, but between the building and gravity. I found the real problem on a Tuesday. I was up on a scissor lift inspecting the coffered ceiling in the main hall when I saw the crack. It wasn't a surface fissure. It was a shear crack in the main load-bearing truss. I came down and found Valentina in her office. It was a cramped room stacked floor to ceiling with archives smelling of tea and anxiety. We have a problem, I said, entering without knocking. She looked up from a laptop screen that was displaying a terrifyingly red spreadsheet. "Can it wait? The developer, Mr. King, just sent me a formal notice. He claims we're in violation of the ADA compliance code and wants to send his own inspector tomorrow." "This is bigger than ADA," I said. I placed my photos on her desk. "The main truss is compromised. If we get a heavy snow load, which the forecast says is coming Thursday, the roof could sag, maybe collapse." Her face went white. She stood up, her hands gripping the edge of the desk. "Collapse. It's fixable," I said quickly. "But it requires steel plating, a flitch beam retrofit. It's expensive, Valentina, and it's loud." "How expensive?" I gave her the number. She sank back into her chair, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "We don't have it," she whispered. "The grant money doesn't release until the audit is passed. I have maybe 1/10 of that in the operating budget." She looked at the notice from the developer. "Atticus King knows," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "He knows the roof is bad. That's why he's sending the inspector tomorrow. If they tag the building as structurally failing, the city condemns it. He buys the foreclosure for pennies." She looked at me, eyes wet but furious. "You have to help me hide it." "I can't hide a cracked truss, Valentina. It's negligence." "Just for tomorrow," she pleaded, "just until the inspector leaves. If we pass the safety check, I can use the grant money next week to pay you for the steel." I looked at her desperate face. This was the trap. This was exactly how I got burned 5 years ago. Doing a favor that turned into a liability. "No," I said. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I won't hide it," I said, stepping closer, putting my hands on her desk, leaning in until I could smell her perfume, something like vanilla and old leather. "I'm going to fix it." "You just said we can't afford it." "You can't afford the steel," I said. "But I have a stockpile of reclaimed white oak in my warehouse. It's stronger than steel if you laminate it right. I can shore up that truss tonight. It won't be a permanent fix, but it will hold for the inspection. It will pass load tests." "Why?" she asked, searching my face. "Why would you do that? You're losing money." "Because Atticus King is a shark," I said, my voice low, "and I don't like seeing sharks eat librarians." I didn't tell her the real reason. That watching her fight for this dusty, broken place made me want to be the kind of man who could actually save something. "I need access," I said, "all night, and I need you to stay out of the way." She stood up. "I'm staying. I can hand you tools." "Valentina." "I'm staying, Miles." The night was long. The library at 3 a.m. was a different world. The shadows were deep and the silence was heavy. I was up on the scaffolding, sweat soaking through my shirt despite the chill. I was bolting the laminated oak brace into place, my triceps screaming. It was brutal, physical work. Valentina was below, holding the flashlight steady. She hadn't complained once. She hadn't yawned. She just watched, moving the light exactly where I needed it before I even asked. She had an instinct for it. "Clamp," I grunted, reaching down. She placed the heavy steel C-clamp into my hand. Her fingers brushed mine. Her skin was cool. Mine was burning hot from exertion. The contrast sent a shock up my arm that nearly made me drop the tool. I secured the clamp and tightened it until the wood groaned and settled. "That's it," I breathed, wiping my forehead with my forearm. "It's braced." I climbed down the scaffolding, my legs feeling like jelly. I hit the floor and leaned back against the pillars, sliding down until I was sitting on the parquet. Valentina sat down next to me. She looked exhausted, smudges of dust on her pristine white shirt. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it." I corrected. I reached for my water bottle, but my hand was shaking. Tremors. Fatigue. She noticed. She didn't say anything. She just reached into her bag and pulled out a thermos. She poured the cup full of steaming tea and held it out to me. "Drink," she commanded gently. I took it. It was Earl Grey sweet. It tasted like life. "You have good hands," she said, looking at my scarred knuckles wrapped around the delicate cup. I snorted. "They're beat up." "No," she said. She reached out and touched the scar on the back of my left hand, a jagged white line from a table saw accident years ago. "They know how to put things back together. That's a rare skill, Miles. Most people only know how to take things apart." I looked at her. We were sitting on the floor of a freezing library in the middle of the night, surrounded by tools and dust. The library felt so quiet, I could hear the faint hiss of rain on old glass. Our breath moved in short, pale bursts. Dust floated and glittered in the thin beam of my flashlight as the distance between us shrank to a handful of inches. I wanted to kiss her. The urge was a physical ache in my chest. I wanted to lean across the 6 inches of space between us and taste the vanilla and tea. I caught myself staring at her mouth. I forced my eyes up to the ceiling to the truss I had just saved. "It will hold," I said, my voice rough. "The inspector won't see a crack. He'll see a reinforcement." "You saved us," she whispered. "Don't get used to it." I deflected, masking the hunger in my voice with gruffness. "I bill double for overtime." She laughed, a low, tired sound that wrapped around my ribs. "I'll put it on the tab." The inspector came and went. We passed. Barely. But we passed. The relief in the library was palpable. Valentina actually smiled, a real smile that showed teeth and crinkled the corners of her eyes. But the victory was short-lived. 2 days later, I was in the basement checking the foundation. The visual discrepancy struck me. The boiler room floor was wet, not damp wet. I traced the line. It wasn't a leak in the boiler. It was rising damp. The water table was shifting. I went upstairs to find Valentina. She was in the main hall arguing with a man in a tailored suit, Atticus King. He was smooth-polished and radiated fake concern. "Just thinking of your safety, Ms. Rodriguez," King was saying. "If the foundation is shifting the liability alone." "The foundation is fine," Valentina snapped. I walked up. "Actually," I said, "it's not." Valentina spun around, betrayal flashing in her eyes. King smiled. "Mr. Carter," King said. "Excellent timing. You found something." I looked at Valentina. I had to tell the truth. If I lied and the building shifted, people would die. But if I told the truth, King won. "There is water intrusion in the sub-basement," I said. "Significant hydrostatic pressure." King nodded, pulling out his phone. "I'll call the city engineer. Sounds like an immediate condemnation order." "No," I said. I stepped between King and Valentina, physically blocking him. I was 3 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier, mostly muscle built from hauling lumber. King took a step back. "It's not condemnation level," I said, my voice hard. "It requires a sump pump system and a perimeter drain. It's a standard repair. 2 weeks, $10,000. 10,000 we don't have." King pointed out, looking at Valentina. "We have it," I lied. Valentina looked at me, eyes wide. "I'm funding the repair," I said. "As a donation to the Heritage Fund, tax write-off." King's smile faltered. "You're the independent contractor, Mr. Carter. Conflict of interest." "I'm a citizen of Portland," I said. "I can donate to a library if I want. Call the city. Tell them the problem is identified and funded. Remediation starts tomorrow." King glared at me, his jaw working. "You're making a mistake, Miles. This place is a money pit." "It's a landmark," I said. "Get out." King straightened his jacket, shot a cold look at Valentina, and left. As soon as the heavy doors slammed shut, Valentina turned on me. "You don't have $10,000 to throw away." "I do, actually," I said. "I live cheap. I can't take your money." "You're not taking it. The building is." I turned to walk away, my adrenaline crashing. "Miles." She grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong. I stopped. Her face was flushed, her eyes searching mine. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Is it because you feel sorry for me, the poor librarian with her broken building?" "No," I said. "Then what? What do you want?" I looked down at her hand on my arm. "I want you to be safe," I said. "I want this place to stand." She stepped closer, the air charged with electricity. And I want to take you to dinner." I admitted the words tumbling out. "Somewhere that isn't full of sawdust." "But I can't do that if you're homeless and unemployed because King bulldozed your life." She stared at me. Then she let go of my arm and took a step back, creating a barrier. "I can't," she said softly. "Not until the grant comes through. Not until the building is safe. I can't be distracted." My jaw locked. I nodded once too sharp. My fingers closed around my tool bag handle until the leather bit, and then I set it down carefully, like it might snap if I didn't. "Right," I said, pulling back into my shell. "Business first. I'll order the pumps." The next week was brutal. We worked around each other in a silence that felt heavy and bruised. I installed the pumps. The basement dried out. The building stabilized. But the dynamic had shifted. She was polite, distant. I was efficient, cold. Then came the storm. It was a Friday night. A winter gale hit Portland, knocking out power across the grid. The library went dark at 5:00 p.m. I was packing up my tools when I heard the crash. It came from the west wing, and the section closed off for storage. "Valentina!" I yelled, running toward the sound. I found her in the narrow aisle of the archives. A rolling ladder had come off its track in the dark. She was on the floor, clutching her ankle. Boxes of files were scattered everywhere. "I'm okay," she gasped, trying to stand and failing. "I just slipped." "Don't move," I commanded. I knelt beside her, pulling out my heavy flashlight. The beam cut through the dusty darkness. Her ankle was already swelling. "I have to get the files," she said, reaching for a box. "The roof in here, it leaks." "Forget the files," I snapped. "We need to get you out." "No." She grabbed my shirt, her fingers digging into the fabric. "These are the original deeds, the proof of the heritage status. If they get wet, we lose the grant. King wins." I looked up. I could hear the drip, drip, drip of water. The storm had found a way in. I looked at her ankle. I looked at the boxes. "Okay," I said. "I'll get them." I scooped her up. She gasped, her arm going around my neck instinctively. I carried her out of the archive, her body warm and solid against mine, smelling of pain and vanilla. I set her down on the velvet sofa in the main reading room, wrapping my heavy canvas coat around her shoulders. "Stay," I ordered. I ran back into the dark west wing. I grabbed the boxes of deeds. I grabbed the plastic tarps from my kit. I spent 20 minutes frantically waterproofing the section, moving priceless history out of the drip line. When I came back soaking wet and covered in dust, Valentina was shivering on the sofa. The library was freezing without the heat. I knelt in front of her. "It's safe. The deeds are dry." She looked at me, her eyes huge in the flashlight beam. "You're wet." "I'm fine." I reached for her ankle. Let me see. Miles. Let me see Valentina. I unlaced her boot with gentle, precise movements. I peeled off her sock. Her ankle was blue and swollen. I warmed my hands with my breath before touching her skin. She hissed in a breath. "It's sprained, not broken," I said. "I have ice in my cooler." I fetched the ice pack and wrapped it in a shop rag. I propped her foot on my knee, holding the ice against the swelling. She watched me. "You always fix things," she whispered. "It's my job." "No," she said. "It's who you are." She leaned forward, the oversized collar of my coat framing her face. "You offered me your coat. You're freezing." "I run hot." "Liar." She reached out and touched my face. Her thumb brushed my cheekbone. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "You asked what I wanted," she said softly. "Before." I froze. "Yeah. I don't want to be distracted," she said. "But I think I'm already distracted." I turned my face into her palm. I closed my eyes. The exhaustion, the guilt, the cold, it all faded. "Valentina," I warned, my voice low. "If I kiss you, I'm not going to stop." She threaded her fingers into my damp hair. "Good." I leaned in. I didn't rush. I bridged the distance slowly, giving her every chance to back away. She didn't. She met me halfway. Her lips were soft, tasting of tea. The kiss started gentle, a question, and then she made a sound, a small, desperate noise in her throat, and I was lost. I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her flush against me, careful of her ankle. The darkness of the library wrapped around us, a private world where only the two of us existed. For the first time in years, I wasn't fixing anything. I was just home. The next morning, reality hit. The power was back on. I was finishing the bracing on the West Wing roof. Valentina was at her desk, looking flushed and happy. We shared secret smiles across the room. Then Nathaniel, my foreman, walked in. He looked grim. "Miles," he said, "we have a problem." He handed me a letter. It was from the City Licensing Board. Notice of license suspension. Pending investigation into unpermitted structural modifications. Atticus King. He had found out about the truss. "They're shutting us down," Nathaniel said. "Stop work order. Effective immediately." I felt the blood drain from my face. If I couldn't finish the work, the building wouldn't pass the final audit next week. The grant would expire. King would win. I walked over to Valentina. She saw the paper in my hand, and her smile died. "What is it?" I handed her the letter. She read it. She looked up at me, betrayal warring with panic. "Unpermitted modifications. The truss, you didn't file the permit." "I couldn't," I said. "If I filed the permit, they would have inspected before the fix and condemned us. I took the risk." "You risked the library." "I risked my license," I shot back. "I did it to save you." "You didn't ask me," she yelled. "You made a decision for me. That is exactly what King does. That is exactly what my father did. Let the men handle it. I am the director, Miles. It was my call to make. It was an emergency. It was arrogant." She slammed the letter on the desk. "Get out, Valentina. If you can't work legally, you can't be here. King will use your presence to invalidate the whole project. Leave." I looked at her. The wall was back up. The fortress was sealed. I grabbed my bag. "Fine. Good luck with the audit." I walked out. I didn't look back. 3 days blurred inside my apartment. The kettle screamed. Coffee went cold. The same spot on the wall took all the hits my eyes didn't want to take. Nathaniel called twice. I answered once, said 3 words, and hung up. Tools stayed lined on the counter like soldiers nobody had ordered to move. Valentina's last sentence replayed anyway. Not the volume, the content. I hadn't asked. I'd decided. I'd treated the library like a structure to rescue and Valentina like an obstacle to root around. I thought I was saving the building. I didn't realize I was bulldozing the director. A paper cup slid under my palm. It crushed with a dull crack. I stared at the calendar until the numbers stopped being ink and started being consequences. The final audit was tomorrow. The final audit was tomorrow. Without the permit for the truss, they would fail. Keys hit my palm. The drive to City Hall felt longer than it was, wipers thudding like a metronome, counting down. Inside, fluorescent light flattened everything. I took a number, waited, watched a mother argue about a permit fee, watched a contractor charm a clerk. 4 hours later, my name finally rang out. The chief engineer didn't stand to greet me. He didn't smile either. A file sat open on his desk, with my name on the tab. Miles Carter, he said. Unpermitted structural work on a protected landmark. I should suspend you on the spot. And if you think I'm going to rubber stamp this because we shared a job 10 years ago, you picked the wrong office. I didn't argue. The binder landed on his desk with a controlled thud. Tabs, photos, calculations, thermal images, soil moisture readings. A section on rising damp and hydrostatic pressure with dates and location grids. Page 12, I said. Efflorescence on the south wall. Tide line at 30 inches. Moisture migration from below grade. It wasn't just the storm. It's been building. He flipped to it. His eyes moved faster than his hands wanted to admit. He paused at the stamped engineer seals. Your numbers are clean, he said finally. Your fix is stronger than what was there. That's not the problem. The problem is the paper, I said. He leaned back. The problem is accountability. Retroactive permits make me look corrupt. They make the city look corrupt. And they teach every cowboy with a nail gun that rules are optional. Silence sat between us. The air conditioner rattled in the ceiling like loose ductwork. Name the price, I said. He stared at me for a long second, then wrote as he spoke. You pay the maximum fine. You go on professional probation. Your file gets a notation. One more violation and your license goes dark for a year. I didn't blink. And, he continued, voice hard, you become engineer of record for this landmark for 12 months. Pro bono, monthly site reports, 2 surprise inspections that I schedule. If anything fails, it's your name on the failure, not the library's. My throat tightened. I nodded once. Sign, he said, sliding the agreement forward. You're not buying the permit. You're buying the responsibility. The pen felt too light. My signature looked like it belonged to someone else. If King files a complaint, he added, I won't shield you. I won't shield anyone. Understand? Understood. He stamped the paperwork, not with warmth, with procedure. When I walked out, the city didn't look different. My name did. Back at the library, I found Valentina by the east wing hands, clasped tight enough to turn her knuckles pale. You went to City Hall, she said. I set the approved permit on the table between us. The paper trembled at the edges from the rain on my coat. The fine cleared, I said. Probation's on record, and I signed 12 months of oversight. Monthly reports, surprise inspections. Her eyes lifted sharp. You did that for my building. For the building, I said. And because you were right. I don't get to decide your future for you. I can only own my choices. The permit sat there like a truce. It's legal, I finished quietly. Valentina, the truss is legal. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. Mr. Auditor. Valentina said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. Here is the permit for the structural reinforcement of the East Wing, completed by a licensed master carpenter. The auditor checked the paper. He nodded. Looks in order. Let's proceed. King turned purple. This is he bribed someone. Careful, Atticus, I said, stepping up beside Valentina. Slander is expensive. The audit took 2 hours. I walked with them, answering every technical question, but I let Valentina lead. She showed them the restoration, the care, the history. She was magnificent. At the end, the auditor snapped his clipboard shut. It passes, he said. I'll certify the grant release tomorrow. King stormed out without a word. The library was quiet. Just me and Valentina. She stood in the center of the room, vibrating with relief. Then she turned to me. You took probation, she said. You can't work for 3 months. I need a break anyway. I shrugged. My back hurts. Miles. She walked over to me. She stopped a foot away. You risked your career. I made a mistake, I said. I didn't ask you. I should have asked. I'm sorry. It was the hardest thing I had ever said. She smiled. It was the same smile from the night of the storm. You fixed it, she said. I tried. No, she said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. A heavy old brass key. The master key to the library. I can't pay you yet, she said. But we have a lot of broken furniture, and I hear you have free time. She held out the key. Are you hiring me? I asked. I'm asking you to stay, she said. As a partner. The building needs you. She took a breath. I need you. I took the key, our fingers laced together. I'm not going anywhere, I said. She pulled me down for a kiss right there in the middle of the St. Jude's Athenaeum, surrounded by 1,000 stories. Beat 10 resolution 6 weeks later. The gala. The library was transformed. The wood glowed under the warm light of the chandeliers. The truss, my truss, was hidden behind fresh plaster, doing its job silently. The room was full of donors, city officials, and press. Valentina was on a small stage wearing a velvet dress that made my mouth go dry. She looked regal. I stood in the back in my best suit, which was uncomfortable, holding a glass of champagne. And finally, Valentina said into the microphone, I want to introduce the man who literally held the roof up. She pointed at me. The spotlight swung. I hated it. I wanted to hide under a table. Miles Carter, she said, our chief preservationist. The crowd applauded. I nodded, awkward. She came down from the stage and walked straight to me. The crowd parted. You didn't have to do that, I muttered. I wanted to, she said. She took my hand openly in front of everyone. In front of the board, the donors, the city. Come on, she whispered. I have something for you. She led me to the back to the reading table I had fixed on that first day. Sitting on it was a small wooden box. Open it, she said. I opened it. Inside was a vintage block plane, Leigh Nielsen, bronze body, beautiful. It was my father's, she said. He wasn't a carpenter, but he used to say that keeping a library is like planing wood. You have to smooth out the rough spots to see the grain. She looked at me, her eyes shining. It belongs to the person who takes care of this place, she said. That's you. I picked up the tool. It had weight. It had history. Thank you, I choked out. Don't thank me yet, she smiled, echoing my words from weeks ago. The roof in the West Wing still leaks. I laughed. I put my arm around her waist, pulling her close. I looked around the room at the solid pillars, the dry books, the warm light. I used to think my job was to fix things that were broken. I realized now that was only half of it. The real job was finding the things worth saving and standing next to them until they were strong enough to stand on their own. I'll take a look at it tomorrow, I promised. Good, she whispered, leaning her head on my shoulder. Because we have all night. Winning isn't about overpowering the problem or the person you love. It's about integrity. I learned that doing the right thing the wrong way without consent or partnership is still a failure. True strength is fixing the foundation so you can build something together, not just for them. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.